Well, hello and welcome. Thanks for joining us for this week's panel conversation. I'm really excited about the folks that we have with us today. We're going to be sharing perspectives on how we're going about building stronger engagement in the community, especially as we're kind of now getting into a new phase of COVID recovery and with the American Rescue Funds. It's really a great opportunity for us to get the input and insights and what's working from these local government professionals. And the panel today is a really great one. My name is Matt Fulton. I'm the Vice President of National Engagement for a company called Polco. Polco is involved with helping communities build better engagement and helping to track performance. And the idea behind these panel conversations is simply to help communities hear from other government leaders about what's working in their communities, and especially as you're gearing up for the American Rescue Funds program, what are they doing and what kind of activities are they going about focusing on to prepare their communities for the implementation of the recovery program. Here's kind of the agenda for the day. I'll do a quick panel introduction of the folks that are joining us, and then we will get into a series of 3 questions that each of the panelists will be given an opportunity to respond. Following those questions, they may have some other issues they want to bring up or other points they want to bring up, and so we'll provide a little bit of time for that as well. And then we'll wrap things up, and generally these conversations take about an hour, but they are good conversations to have. And so if that's okay, let's just jump into the introductions. Our first panelist, excuse me, our first panelist is Sam Gaston. Sam has been the city manager of Mountain Brook, Alabama since 1993. Sam also served as city manager in several other communities in Georgia and Alabama before that. Of course, people that are in the profession mostly recognize Sam for his leadership at ICMA, where he served on the executive board and as ICMA president in 2011 and 2012. And for those folks who also know Sam, you'll appreciate his support for the Auburn Tigers and his alma mater of the University of Auburn, where he got his bachelor's and master's degree in public administration. He served as president of the Alabama City County Management Association and the Alabama chapter for the American Planning Association, and several local service organizations throughout his career. He's currently working with Auburn University on their MPA advisory committee, as well as with their Government and Economic Development Institute. Sam, thank you for spending a little bit of time. Would you mind just adding a little bit of color to your background?
Well, due to ICMA, my long time in being involved in ICMA and ICMA conferences being moved around, and also the ICMA board meetings that I've attended, I was able to make it to all 50 states. That's one of my bucket lists. I was realizing how close I was. So as we would go to different conferences, we would knock off another state or 2 nearby. So anyway, I can say that I've been to all 50 states, and I'd say at least half of them due to ICMA.
That's great. Well, Sam, thank you for being part of this conversation today. I'm really happy to introduce our second panelist. Marcia Blick is a good friend of mine and a well-respected manager in Minnesota. She's a manager in Robbinsdale, and she's also the executive director for the Robbinsdale EDA, and a board member for the Chamber of Commerce in the community. So she's really deeply engaged in community activities. She's been with Robbinsdale going back to 1987, so she is a well-tenured manager. She's got a master's degree in public administration from Hamline University and a BA from Grinnell College. Marcia, thank you for being here. And for all of the years that we have known each other, I really always appreciated the work that you've done, not only in your community, but for the profession. So can you add a little bit more color to your background?
Well, sure. So I've watched the Robbinsdale community grow within, even though it was fully developed when I started here, and we've been doing a lot of redevelopment. The community of Robbinsdale is only 14,500, but we touch Minneapolis on one side, Brooklyn Center on another side. So we get involved in a lot of really big issues. And the community is not shy about knowing all our personal phone numbers and giving us a call or emailing us and staying in really close touch on everything on their mind.
Well, that is very appropriate that you're here to share some of those perspectives with us on how you understand them and how you manage them. And I think the point, Marcia, that you're bringing up about you kind of being in the mix of all the dynamics that's going on in the Twin Cities right now will add a lot of value to this conversation. So thank you very much for spending some time.
Sure.
Let me introduce our third panelist. Cynthia Espinoza is the assistant to the city manager in San Jacinto, California. Aside from providing the city manager and city council support, she's very active in managing several community outreach programs relating to the city's Healthy Cities program and community gardens, homelessness. She has a wide array of responsibilities in her job. Cynthia manages the city's social media platforms and public information outlets, and has designed the content for the city's annual report and their bi-monthly newsletter. Recently, Cynthia included in her bio that she created and launched Ignite San Jacinto program. And I'm excited about hearing maybe a little bit about that because it sounds like a great community engagement effort. Cynthia's got a master's degree in public administration from California State University and brings a unique and effective combination of private and nonprofit experience to the community. So Cynthia, thank you for being here. And if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit more, I'd really appreciate it.
Yes, of course, and I appreciate the opportunity of being here. Yeah, so recently our community, because of COVID, we weren't able to launch Ignite San Jacinto in person, but we went the other route. We went completely virtual and gave the community a little spark of ignition for them to be able to take their health and their community and their involvement and connection with each other back into their hands. And that really is what Ignite San Jacinto is. It's very purposeful, education-based, and it gives the power back to the community, and we engage with them that way, bringing them resources.
You know, just given that, I'm really excited about having you as part of this conversation. So thank you for being here. Well, let's jump into the topic. The topic for the conversation is the value of community engagement under the American Rescue Plan Act. And, you know, COVID has just disrupted all of our lives in so many different aspects, not only organizationally, but from a community perspective, from a business perspective. It just seems that everything has been turned upside down over the past year plus. And then you add on all of the kind of social unrest issues, the division politically that a lot of our communities are experiencing. It's just a really unsettled environment. And so it just becomes more and more and more important to kind of pay attention to how do you go about engaging with residents and stakeholders on things that are important to them and to the community in general, just so that you've got a pathway going forward, and particularly as you're coming out of COVID, a strategic direction to grab onto that aligns well with the community values as well as your resources that you have available. You know, the pandemic has created all sorts of challenges for all of us, but honestly, engagement has never really been easy. Through our research, we know that engagement is really a challenge. In fact, our research will say that 80% of U.S. adults have never even been to a city council meeting. We do know that local government trust has actually increased during the pandemic, and I think that in part is just a kind of a result of the reality that people are looking to local governments for guidance and help and that safety and security. But our research will also say that it's a fragile level of trust. And because there's not that really true strong connection with the day-to-day activities, there's really not a context to put some of these crises into. And so then all of a sudden you see communities in significant disarray and with upset folks and civil unrest and all the kind of things that you're seeing. And so these kind of conversations are really important just to understand what should communities do or what can communities do in order to benefit from and help communities and residents feel like they're invested and they're being heard and their voices are part of the conversation. And so these conversations, I think, are really important to have just to help other communities and those folks who are participating in the conversation benefit from the perspectives that local government leaders like yourselves are really doing. So there are three questions that we're going to be visiting today. The first one is, how are you identifying community needs and priorities that you're going to be focusing in on during the American Rescue Plan Act? Second one is, how does resident input help guide the delivery of public services in your community? And then finally, how are you going about, what strategies and tools are you finding successful to help you engage with your residents, for helping you understand where their perspectives are, as well as for helping you track performance? And so with that, let's kick into the first question. And Sam, I really would like to start with you. How are you identifying community needs and priorities that are going to be addressed using the ARPA resources?
Well, we're actually struggling with that right now because we feel like some of the guidance is not very clear, and we hope that there will be additional guidance and maybe additional leeway that will be allowed to local governments like they did during the CARES Act funding. Our finance director has put together kind of a chart of what we think we can apply for as far as actually lost revenues during the COVID era. Also, we're working with our Chamber of Commerce about what other relief we might can do for some of our businesses that may have suffered loss, as far as tourism. Again, we're a smaller community, but we do have a couple of hotels, including a very nice boutique hotel that is right across from the Birmingham Botanical Gardens and also the Birmingham Zoo, which is right across from Birmingham. We don't have any utilities. All the utilities are run by either like Alabama Power, Spire, or used to be Allegasco. Birmingham Waterworks is a regional water system, and then Jefferson County has the regional sewer system. There are just a few cities in the area that have their own utilities, but most of us are served by those large ones. So we're looking at those. We've had a lot of major rains that we're hoping to use some of these funds for to help with some drainage projects, but it doesn't seem like that may not work. We have a lot of hotspots, internet hotspots throughout our commercial villages, some of our parks or athletic complexes and other areas. We were hoping to also use those funds to help, improve some of the equipment that are starting to wear out, but we're not that certain about it. So we're still kind of struggling about how we're going to spend these monies. We don't feel like it's quite as clear as the CARES Act regulations are. And so we're hoping for additional guidance. But our council, our finance director, our city auditors, and some other people, have been meeting. We've got another meeting next week. We catch you next, scheduled to kind of go over some of the regulations again, and also putting together a proposed spending plan. We did our budget didn't start October 1st, but we kicked off our budget process on Tuesday with an annual 2-3 hour meeting for our council, showing our projected revenues, projected projects we may want to include. And we did also have some discussion about the American Rescue Act funds too.
One thing I'll just mention to all three of you, we're partners with ICMA and NLC. And one of the things that we are doing on behalf of communities is we actually have what we call an ARPA package, just to help communities with that ARPA process. And I bring it up only because you're talking about, Sam, trying to get your arms around kind of these initial days. We actually have a webinar structure or scheduled for next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central that you will probably get some material on, and you might want to join in on that if you want to just kind of learn a little bit more about a potential way you might be able to get your arms around this stuff.
Yeah, we have the finance director and I have looked at a couple of webinars and anyway, but we're still trying to wrap our arms really around the true nature of how we can spend these monies.
Yeah, thank you. Marcia, can you talk about what Robbinsdale is doing in identifying your community needs and priorities in this kind of new ARPA timeframe?
Well, one of the things we're trying to get our arms around is all of the different pockets of money that are coming in from all sorts of different directions. Similar to when the CARES money came through, it's, well, maybe we need to help the schools, but then the schools were getting money a different way. What about the hospital that we have in our community? But then the hospital was getting money a different way. And just really trying to understand where all these big buckets of money are going already, and figuring out what does the community really need on top of what's going to be coming available other ways. Robbinsdale is situated inside Hennepin County, and I think Hennepin County is probably bigger than some states. And I know they have a huge amount of money, and they're looking at a lot of their core services, which would include some of the, the social components, helping people with rent assistance and, different things like that. So we're just kind of trying to figure out who's doing what. Timing being everything. We just started a new water treatment plant, centralized system construction this year. So that would be debt service. So we're not going to be able to probably use the money in that direction. We are putting up a new water tower. Maybe we can use it for that. Thinking of this also as being one-time money. And there's always great interest from the community, and you've got this money, let's start this new department, let's start this new ongoing activity. And it's really, it's one time, and it's one-time money that we need to use wisely and apply it in that. And I know in one of the webinars I was in this month, they talked about cybersecurity being something. And I know that we've had issues with water plants and cybersecurity issues, and to the extent that that might not already be part of funds being spent, updating the water treatment plant, the off-site operations of the valves and things. If there's something we could do with the upgrading of our cybersecurity, might be again a good community as a whole investment that would be good for us. And another thing we thought about is within 2 years, we need to update the water and sanitary mains through our historic downtown. And the historic downtown includes a bunch of businesses that are 25 feet foot frontages. So maybe we could use the money to help pay for the water and sewer infrastructure in that historic downtown to help reduce the assessments that those businesses would need to do. So that would help the small businesses and yet still fit into that infrastructure category. So a lot to learn, a ton of different webinars from, what the National League of Cities, ICMA, Minnesota, and even the local financial advisors. There's plenty of information coming our way, and we're just taking a breath and trying to analyze it all.
Though I'm glad that you talked about one of the topics that I really didn't focus on in my introductory comments is the effectiveness of the use of the money. And so I'm glad that Robbinsdale's thinking long-term and thinking about how do you use the money wisely. I think one of the worst things that could happen in local government is if at the end of this program, all that has happened is that new programs have been created that have created kind of additional tail ends and not really address the issues and the intent for the use of those monies. So thanks for bringing that up. I am kind of curious, Marcia, do you anticipate that some of your service delivery will take on more of a regional focus? Because that's one of the areas that I know is being thought about as a viable avenue for the use of these funds.
You'd have to explain more on that.
Just the regional collaborative services beyond what you're already doing with the county or with other communities.
Well, look, Hennepin County has always been big on rehab loans and, different sorts of things. And, we have the different community food banks and things like that. They also get county support. So there's those regional things. I know there's a lot of regional things that'll probably spin out from the county, but I'm not looking at a regional from our entity.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Cynthia, can you talk about how San Jacinto is identifying your community needs and priorities under the ARPA Act?
Well, for us, we are in the same boat as many cities, trying to be able to fit what our community is telling us into those guidelines and being able to spend it in the true needs of the community. San Jacinto isn't necessarily a tourism or entertainment corridor, so we're unable to use funds in that sense. But one method or information that we're using to be able to prioritize the needs of our community, we're actually using data that we've received in the past from back in July. Our council put a ballot measure together for a 1 cent sales tax increase. What a time to do it, right? And that time really told us, the community survey that was done during that time told us through the eyes of our community and our voters, our residents, they're completely telling us what they're seeing is a need and a priority to them. And for us in San Jacinto, that is where we want to focus. And looking at the guidelines and how broad they are and how limiting they are anyway is the challenge, and being able to fit the specific needs of our community into those guidelines. So using past information, any social media input was pretty much confirmed through that survey that was performed. And that's what we're doing. We are completely trying to find creative ways to be able to infuse that money back into our infrastructure that is, we're 133 years old. So the lack of infrastructure is a big concern for the community, but it also isn't outlined in those guidelines.
Cynthia, I'd be curious, with all of your outreach work that you do in your job, did you experience any shift in the level of involvement or engagement over the past year?
Yes, so we started becoming more active on our social media platforms and really using it as a tool. Even though we're a socially distanced world, we're now becoming a more virtually connected world. So using that to garner all of our community and really engage with them and be able to humanize the process. We're still here. We're still working. We didn't stop, and working with that open door and making ourselves available still, even though we're not supposed to see each other, but we're still here and opening it up. We saw a big complete jump with our community and our following, not only on Facebook, but Nextdoor. We started using Nextdoor as a big platform and a vehicle to be able to engage and get critical information out to our community. But we have a lot of we have a huge senior community as well here. So getting that out paper or being out in the community and being a part of them was a big part of that.
Yeah, it sounds like you are already a very engaged community.
Mm-hmm. We are, and we love it. As staff, we like for them to know that we're here for them and we have a passion to serve them.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. Marcia, can you talk about your perspective on how community input influences how you're meeting resident and business needs in Robbinsdale?
Sure. Well, like I said, our community is not shy. We're a small town, and they all know who we are. And they're good at bringing things to our attention, and sometimes it's just little things. We've been having a lot of community conversations and looking at race and equity, and basketball hoops came up, and your basketball backboards are crazy, and it's like, oh, well, no one said anything. So we're just trying to always hear what they have to say. And of course, every two years, half the community has council members running for office, and they're walking down the streets and door knocking at every house and finding out what everybody's thinking. And that's a really valuable way of doing it. The old fashioned knocking on every door, which they do because we're small enough. We're only 2.9 square miles. And just finding out what absolutely everybody thinks and what priorities are. And a lot of it comes down also to education about what does a city do versus what does the federal government do. So it's lots and lots of opportunity for education. And, the other thing that came up the other day, we were replacing a playground, and people are pointing at the $1 million playground that went in a neighboring community with all sorts of regional funding. And well, why aren't you guys doing $1 million playground when you're replacing an existing playground? And yeah, that'd be nice. We don't have $1 million, and but trying to listen to what they're looking for and figuring out, well, maybe what we need to be more aggressive and looking for grants to try and find a way to have that type of facility somehow, not in that grand scale, but something that will meet their needs.
Did you figure out, or did you sense an increase in engagement during the last year, during COVID, when you're meeting more virtually?
It's hard to say. I mean, it's different because there's a lot of people that we're not hearing from that we normally would. The normal people that would come into City Hall that have been afraid to leave their homes. We're not hearing as much from them, but we're hearing from different people. The virtual meetings have, a lot of times it's just people phoning in and you don't know who they are. Whereas if they were in the council chambers, you could see them. So, it is definitely social media has been more active. with people being virtually at home and checking their social media during the day more often, perhaps.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Cynthia, how does your community benefit from the use of that community input and just in terms of meeting resident and business needs?
You know, it really gives us an insider look into what they really want. You know, us as staff, we can only know so much. So for us, we are very data and input driven here at San Jacinto. It really helps us put together initiatives that will be used. You know, we don't want to put together programming that isn't of interest of our community. That as staff, we thought it would be a great idea, but it really doesn't work for what our community really wants. So, you know, a lot of the input helps us look for grants and programming that other cities are doing that our community is interested in and can really benefit from.
Do you have, does your community get involved very much, or is it a very strong priority to get your community involved in like your strategic planning process, or how does that all play out?
So for us, we like to invite our community in various different vehicles of input. So we will invite you out to a workshop that's in person, or we will give you the avenue, if you're not available during that time, to go online and fill out a survey. Or give you the contact information of where you can send your input for. And just like our community needs survey during the Measure V, our sales tax campaign, we gave them plenty of opportunities in Spanish and in English to be able to participate in that. If you wanted your voice heard, we really value that voice in our community. Yeah.
And, you know, providing those opportunities just becomes such a critical thing. It's nice to hear that you're such a data-driven community, because there's just so much noise that communities get impacted by right now, that having the data to support and be able to kind of cut through all that noise, I'm sure it is helpful for you in kind of creating your story and branding your message and kind of putting together your strategic thinking. What are your thoughts on that?
You know, it really helps whittle down and get through all of the noise when you have that data, because now you have the proof and really you're able to go to the sources of that information or of that funding. If we are looking for grants, you know, we're a self-help community. We don't have a very diverse tax base, so we have to be creative in the way that we fund our activities or amenities that we're bringing to our community. One of those being that our community told us that they wanted more activities for our youth, and we needed to find a way that it would be accessible to all of them. So we went after the National Fitness Campaign, which offers completely free gym, an outdoor gym to our community.
Well, that's really very interesting. Yeah. Thank you. Sam, can you talk about how community input influences how resident needs and business needs are being met in Mountain Brook?
Well, we do resident surveys every 3 years. Unfortunately, we did the last one, you know, about 6 months before COVID hit, and so I'm sure that would be a little bit different. But we are very proud of our results, and we use those information to help prioritize our budgeting needs for the next couple of years. We're very active. We have 3 Facebook pages. We really put a lot of information out on the Facebook pages. We have a text alert system, Text My Gov, so we can actually get feedback from our residents. We have a quarterly city newsletter that is posted, of course, on our website, but also is mailed to each resident and business owner here in Mountain Brook. It includes Mountain Brook, city and chamber news. Our Chamber of Commerce, although they are not officially part of the city, they have an office here in City Hall. When we designed our new municipal complex 7.5 years ago, I insisted that the chamber have an office because we work so closely with them in the business community. And so they're our liaison, and they, of course, help us with business related issues, and they have a very active social media presence too. Yep. We also have 3 Facebook pages, private Facebook pages, that seem to cover a lot of activities in Mountain Brook. Mountain Brook Uncensored, what's happening in Mountain Brook and Mountain Brook Today. And of course, I get tagged on there occasionally. It's like the police chief gets tagged occasionally. And so we are always very quick to respond, but we also will post things on there, especially if you've got a road closure or you've got some type of, like we had special TAC training yesterday at the high school. The school's out, but you want to make people aware that this is not a real life incident that was going on with all the policemen and firemen at the high school. This is a training opportunity. We have a beat officer. We have 3 original commercial villages here in Mountain Brook, and we have a beat officer that actually works those villages and gets out and walks the beat, talks to the property owners, the business owners, and lets them know about, issues, or they can translate issues back to us. And then we also, our mayor is very active on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. He's a very active mayor, although he's a ceremonial mayor and part-time mayor. He is extremely active in promoting the city and all the ribbon cuttings or other special events. And so he's almost like a one-man PR campaign himself.
Hey, Sam,
So,
do you know, in your strategic planning process, does the community get engaged very much in that process? And
Not as
how do
much
they-
as we would
how do they
like.
play that?
Not much as we would like. When we did our first visioning process way back in 96, 97, the residents told us they wanted to know more what was going on in the community. And as a result, we put together our first website at the time. We put together a public access channel in conjunction with the school system. And then we also set up the quarterly newsletter. And now, of course, it's evolved into Twitter and Facebook and text alerts, etc. So we have a variety of ways of getting information out to our residents. And my assistant too does a fantastic job on helping us with our social media.
Yeah. Okay. And do you get a lot of people that show up at your council meetings, either live or virtually?
Not as much as we would like. Every community I've ever worked in, it's like we would have more people come to other cities than we do here. Now, if we have a big redevelopment or a big new project plan, because we're heavily residential, we'll have people come out of the woodwork, and it'd be a very small but vocal group. And they will be against anything that they're afraid we're going to screw up the community. But I would say 90% of them would come back after the development is approved and finished. Hey, that turned out pretty nicely. But we have a fear of change in our community.
Yeah.
We've had to move the community forward, but yet keep what is special about Mountain Brook. And we've been successful, but it's been quite painful sometimes.
Yeah, that's the challenge and the benefit of engagement, right?
Right, it is.
Yeah.
And by the way, Marcia and Cynthia, if y'all having trouble with my Southern accent, Matt has known me since 2011, so he can translate for you later on if you don't understand what I'm saying.
I got a lot of family in Indiana. I'm good.
Cynthia, can you talk about the strategies and tools that you are finding successful in your community for engaging residents and tracking your performance?
Yeah, so one of the biggest one is obviously social media right now with COVID. That one went through the roof. Our city manager and sometimes council or special guests will be in front of our community live on Mondays. Every Monday we go live. There is a show we call SJ Live, where we cover what is really going on in the community and what projects and why they're happening and how development works. Usually you really using it and honing in on the educational piece of it, of how long a process in a city can take and why things happen the way they do. But not only that, to get our community excited about what's going on. There's also our city manager launched a 3 Things Thursday, where he covers 3 things on Thursday in 3 minutes. It's a quick snippet of, hey, we're closing out our week, and here's these 3 things that you might have missed and are important for you to know, and really opens up the door for community feedback. Just with those 2 shows, since March 19th of last year, we've already hit our 630,000 engagement mark. So tracking all of those analytics and really looking at the difference in the way that we use our social media platforms, from a national, rescue dog day, and how that engages the community in a different part of the community. And they might share it to other people that didn't even know that we have these fun posts where we're not just business, we're also trying to connect with you in a different level. And then our assessments that we do, our surveys, our economic development team surveys our community, so we can tell our economic, our partners or the people that are interested in coming to the community that we're hungry and our community will support you. During Measure V, what better way that the community told us that they want these new things here is by passing our initiative by 67%. I mean, that's a really high, percentage for a community to tell us we have needs and we want to help with these needs.
Well, first of all, congratulations on your creative approaches. Just those two ideas, those Mondays and Thursdays activities are great ideas that communities may not have thought about, but clearly it's benefiting your community. And isn't it interesting that when you go out to your community to try to get the broader sense of the community, that it comes back 67% in favor of doing something that reinvests in the community?
Yeah.
So many times councils are reluctant to actually push issues forward because they're worried about that pushback. And honestly, sometimes it seems to me, and give me your thoughts on this, but when you go out and ask the community, residents value where they live. They've invested their life in the community. And so they want it to be nice and they want it to be well-maintained and reinvested in. And it sounds like your ballot measure really demonstrated that to be true.
Yes, we're seeing a big change and shift in that they really want to show everyone else their sense of pride of ownership, because San Jacinto is theirs, and we're just here to help them get there and bring the things that they're asking us for. We're your public servants. That's what we're here for. It might sound cheesy, but that's the reality. And our staff has really recognized that. So seeing your city manager out in the community on a community cleanup day is so awesome to see it, because sometimes people just consider your staff as cube dwellers, and we don't like that. We like to be out there and engaging and open door, and that was the sense that we're getting at first through our social media. Well, we don't see you guys enough. Okay, well, if you want us, we will come to you and we will participate. We'd love that. That invitation from our community was so warm, and they received us with open hands.
That's great. That's just so cool.
You said, what kind of dweller?
Well, here in San Jacinto, we have cubicles. So
cubicle dwellers.
So cubicle dwellers. Yeah, that you stay in the cubicle. We don't like to stay in our cubicles. We like to be out there seeing things. Tell us what you want.
The same way here. Our staff is pretty active in the community. Of course, our council is too. And even though we are like you, we abut Birmingham on the north and a little bit on the east, but yet Mount Brook seems like a much smaller town, although we're 13 square miles instead of 3 square miles as you are. But it seems like a much smaller town, and people seem to know each other more. But the staff is very active in the community, out and about, and so is our council. And so it's not hard for people to reach us. And it sounds like the number of emails we've got, because we did keep City Hall closed longer than most. But it's like the number of emails and also requests through our action center of our webpage. We got a lot more of those during the pandemic.
Yeah, people started using our portal as well. We are finding new softwares or, ways to streamline our processes to make it more accessible for what our community wants. I mean, our median age is 31.2. So that tells us that they want easier access for a lot of things, but we also have to be aware of that other side where they still want to come in and see our faces at the counter. So we're open to whatever our community wants.
Sam, let me ask you the question. You addressed this before, and I guess I'm going to be asking you to kind of restate some of the ways that the strategies and the tools and techniques that you're using for capturing resident input, as well as maybe focus on a little bit about how you're tracking your performance.
Okay. Well, like I said, again, through the various social media that we put out, as well as our action center through our revamped website, and then of course our resident survey we do. And like I said, we're very proud. We use the ETC Institute, who does several hundred cities and counties throughout the nation. We're their number one rated client. We rate 45% above the national average as far as their average as far as citizen satisfaction. But we use a variety of process, public hearings. We send out information about projects to get input from residents. And so we use a variety of ways to try to determine what the needs are in the community. Because it seems like it's funny, it's, Mount Brook's kind of a wealthier, upper income community. It seems like always the biggest complaint is about traffic congestion throughout the city. And so, we've made several traffic improvements, but then the council at times have turned down some because it would take up somebody's front yard with additional paving or turn lanes or whatever, but also public safety is very big here. And we do have a very safe community. We were ranked the safest city in Alabama last year, and we were usually between 1 and 4, but that's the first time we've been number 1 in quite a while. So.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Do you have in your strategic plans, do you have metrics that are set in there that focus in on resident sentiment that helps drive or at least allow you to track your performance?
Well, we're probably not as sophisticated as we should be on that, but we also kind of give the council, kind of a number of people who've actually commented for or against a certain project or issue. Yep. Our council, even when we put up a streetlight or new stop sign or whatever, they want to make sure that the nearby residents are notified about the council meeting so they can at least comment pro or con. So most cities was like, we're just going to put that on the next agenda, approve the new streetlight or approve the new stop sign or whatever. Our council wants input from residents on those issues.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Thanks, Sam. Marcia, can you talk about the strategies and tools that you're using in Robbinsdale for getting resident input and tracking your performance?
Yep. So we do our annual survey, performance measures, and of course you do the best you can to get people to participate. And there are some people that just love doing surveys, and there are other people that will never ever find them, and even if they do, they aren't going to tell you, or they give you feedback that they didn't like this particular question. They'll email and say, I didn't like this question, so I'm not going to fill out your survey. So good to know. Thank you. But we're trying some new things. That we took one of our recreation positions and repurposed it as community outreach coordinator, because that's what Park and Recreation does, is it does community outreach. But we actually changed the name to really show how intentional we're trying to be. And one of the things she's trying to do is find inroads into our different apartment buildings, to make sure that the people that are living in the apartment buildings know that, they're a valued part of our community, and we want to hear what they think and what they say, and we want them to come out and participate in our community events. So trying to actually make personal contacts with somebody in every apartment building. And sometimes the property manager is not the one to do it because it's not their job. So we're working very hard at that. And we also got a grant through the, I think it was the Minnesota Park Boards or something. We got a grant to put artists out in the park. And the artists are going to have some surveys, try and get, draw information from people while they're out there doing activities for kids in the park. And so that's something that's a different way to try and approach things, trying to find the people where they are instead of expecting them to come to our webpage or our Facebook page and find that. And we have also had some just open communications, community conversations online with community centers that are community members that have questions about policing. So we've done 2 open community conversations where it's a Robbinsdale for Racial Justice Facebook page that was created after the death of George Floyd, trying to get conversations going and ask a lot of difficult questions about what and why. And of course, we wish that our software for our police department had statistics, and, you work with bigger organizations and trying to get those monolithic software systems able to capture data so that you can report back to community. But it's, we're just trying a lot of different things in different ways. And the other thing we're doing with our community service officers is really you get constant turnover in those positions too, and reminding them, their job isn't just to help wait for the tow truck when when we've arrested someone with DWI. That's not their only job. We also want them to get out of their cars and talk to kids and get to know the people in the community and really connect with the community, because they're community service officers. So they're community outreach to try and help people get to know people in our police department.
Yeah, that's great. And congrats on the creative way that you've been working with your recreation folks for doing that community outreach. That's a very cool approach, and a logical one too. Have you had I'm glad you brought up the policing issue, since you're kind of right in the mix. Have you had a lot of engagement, or what was the experience in those community conversations? Anything that you can share, or maybe even a suggestion, Marcia, for given that experience, what you would suggest that local government leaders think about if they want to get into those kind of conversations?
I think some of it is just, that the community wants information, but they don't necessarily want to communicate directly. They have questions for the police department, but they are uncomfortable with the police because what they've seen about other cities' police departments or other issues, they're just afraid, and they don't know. They're afraid to directly approach. So trying to allow indirect ways to ask the questions, and some people don't want to give their addresses at public hearings anymore because they're afraid of retribution or some retaliation of some sort. And okay, fine. What ward do you live in? That's good enough for public hearings. If you don't want to, if you're worried about identifying yourself and you want to just be and that's a little bit with social media too. If you want to just be a phone number and you don't even want to show your face when you're asking questions. So it's just a lot of different ways that we're having conversations.
Yeah, well, congratulations on having those. Those are really important conversations to have. And, communities around the country, I'm hearing more and more about those similar kinds of things that are going on around the whole police issue. And so I'm glad that you have kind of jumped into them already. So thanks for that.
Yeah.
Great input, great insights from all of you. I would love to just kind of open it up and see if any of you have any additional thoughts or comments that you want to make on or questions for each other. This would be the best time to do that if anything's kind of on your mind.
I'd like to ask the other two panelists, what kind of negative effects did the COVID have? We seem to have a certain group who were just always unhappy. They were unhappy that the schools didn't go 5 days a week immediately. They didn't like the masking of the students or whatever, the guidelines that came down. And so we got some certain group that were always unhappy, and the school system took it out sometimes on the city. Again, very small but very vocal group, and it's like we just couldn't win despite engaging them personally, engaging them online. Did y'all have the same effect of certain small groups that were the anti-maskers, or thought it's all a conspiracy, or that they were angry because it screwed up their child care or their jobs or their daily way of life?
You want to
Well,
Go ahead, Cynthia.
Well, I'll say there are people that are just unhappy, and you can't fix them. And all we can do is listen and acknowledge what their feelings are. And we didn't. I guess we're lucky. The governor is the one that took the bullet and put all the mandates in, so it wasn't something any of the individual cities were doing.
I think for us, we tried to stay ahead of the negativity and really letting our community know where our council stood on certain issues or how supportive we could be towards them. Yes, we would get negative feedback, but we can only do so much. I mean, we didn't want to be more restrictive than what the state was doing, but we also can't be less. And putting that out there and really educating them that it's a public health. The city didn't declare emergency. This is a public health issue, and really bringing it back down and pointing them in the right directions for us was always trying to stay ahead. And I think that really helped our community. I mean, we're considered a small community here in San Jacinto, 50,000 population, but really a bigger community towards, for others in the US. But really, I would say that once we beefed up our community education and our presence and really giving them the resources of, hey, if you see something that you'd like to report, this is where you report it, and you're able to be anonymous. Or if that's something that pertains to the city, we'll give you all the information. And even if you don't like the answer, we can't necessarily change that. We have to stay within parameters. We're only staff.
Cynthia, are you still meeting virtually as a council?
Yes. Currently, our council chambers are being I want to say retrofitted, but because it's so virtual right now, we're prepping to be virtual, so hybrid, in person once we decide, or our council decides to go back in person. But our community loves being able to log in, and not have to be in person and have the ability to have a voice. It's a lot. Access has been amazing for them.
Yeah, we, as you said, we would post immediately on our social media any new updates, proclamations, whatever from the governor of the state of Alabama. But also, it's kind of weird in Alabama, the health department directors in Jefferson County, which we have 36 cities, and we're the most populous county by far. In Mobile County on the coast, they actually have powers that can supersede the above the state mandates. And so sometimes we had some additional mandates that would be directed from the Jefferson County Health Department. And of course, now we were forced to follow them, although we agreed with them. But again, that seemed to not satisfy a lot of our residents, although we would get it out, the informational sheets. They're very good about putting out information sheets to answer questions like a FAQ. And so we did what we thought the best job possible in getting it out, but it still just didn't satisfy a certain percentage of small but vocal group of people.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
I'm glad it's almost over.
Just a couple more, Sam.
I mean, the COVID, the pandemic, not the
COVID.
or maybe both.
Well, thanks for sharing all of your perspectives and some of the creative ways that you're trying to build engagement. I think you're all identifying that you're still getting your arms around this ARPA Act and figuring out the best priorities. I was glad, Cynthia, to hear about kind of the use of your data and the importance of data and the work that you've done historically for kind of identifying those community priorities. I mean, it just strikes me that because of COVID and the pandemic, all of the priorities and expectations have all kind of been unsettled and disrupted over the last year. And so it's really critical that you take that recent information and understand where the true needs are today so that you can kind of align your strategies going forward. And I think you're all working on getting your arms around it so that can be accomplished. I really love the creative ways that the creative and traditional ways that you're engaging with your community and making sure that their voices are being heard in the work that you're doing. Part of the benefit of these conversations is to learn about those creative Thursday video sessions or Monday conversations, those kinds of things that communities might not generally think about, but it might be something that would apply and help in their communities. And Marcia, the work that you're doing on increasing the level, the creative way you're increasing the level of outreach in your community, I think is really commendable. And so congratulations on that. And tracking performance is just such an important thing, particularly as we're trying to figure out how do you get through all of the noise, and all of you are doing it in your own ways. But thanks for sharing about where your communities are in tracking your performance and being able to, Cynthia, I think it's given what you just said, talking about that transparent engagement so that you can get the information out in a meaningful way that will help communities benefit in the future. So thank you. It was a great conversation and great perspectives, and I really appreciated your thoughts. So let's just kind of wrap this up. I will follow up and I will get you contact information and connection data so that you can connect with each other if you like. I do these panel conversations every week. And so if you know of someone who you think might enjoy being part of a panel or would be good at it, certainly send them my way. And I'll catch up with you. I would love to get your feedback and thoughts about what we can do differently or how we can improve these panel conversations. I'm always trying to improve on how we can meet the needs of local government and get them information that they can benefit from and take advantage of the talent and the skills and experiences that all of you have had. So thank you very much for sharing your time and your ideas. And one of the benefits that I have, while I know two of you for a long time and value as friends, I get to interact and, honestly, you don't get to see people that often anymore. So yeah. I'm looking forward to it being done too, Sam. So that we can actually see all of you, maybe in Portland in a few months.
Let's hope so.
Yeah. But I just really appreciate
next week, a summer meeting at the beach. And so We had to cancel the summer meeting last year, but we did have our winter meeting in January, but we had the Zoom option too. So it's going to be great seeing a lot of people that you haven't seen in a long time in person.
Yeah, it really will be. Thank you so much for spending the hour with me, and look forward to your recordings on LinkedIn, and appreciate you sharing them with those folks who respect your opinions and will benefit from it.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thanks,
having
Matt.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Nice seeing you.